There's the tweet from Isaiah Bolden. Appreciate the prayers. More excited to be back with the guys. Isaiah Bolden took an accidental blow to the head from a teammate on Saturday night at Lambeau Field, was unconscious on the ground, and it was a serious situation. Coming just months after Damar Hamlin, I think there's a higher degree of concern when these things happen. It is precautionary in many cases. With Bolden, it felt like it wasn't. Remember with the Damar Hamlin situation, the moments where we recognize this isn't just the precautionary cart, stretcher,
we
backboard.
saw Josh Allen.
Josh Allen does this, and it's like, okay, this is something more serious. And Bolden fell into that category. They suspended the game with 10:29 to play, which is smart. It's a preseason game. It doesn't mean anything. Once you have the players go through that trauma and have that concern when a player is knocked unconscious, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So and hey, when you have an unprecedented situation occur like with Damar Hamlin, that becomes the precedent. That becomes the thing that people can look back to. How did we handle that? What do we do now? And it's easier in a regular or in a preseason game because you don't have to make it up.
Right.
There isn't any impact on the standings. It doesn't mean anything. Let's just call it quits. We had 2 days of joint practices. Let's just call it quits. So Bill Belichick and Matt LaFleur did the right thing. They did the only thing. There's no reason to continue after what occurred. But the good news is Bolden was out of the hospital. Bolden was able to return to New England with the team. So as scary as it was, at the end of the day, it all worked out quickly, and it wasn't nearly as dire as the Damar Hamlin situation. But there was a little while on Saturday night, the text messages we were exchanging among the PFT writers were like, oh, no, is this something even worse than Damar Hamlin? I mean, what do we have going on here? But fortunately, it worked out well for Bolden, for the Patriots, and everybody involved handled it properly. Especially as it relates to deciding to pull the plug on the remainder of the game.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's scary. It's scary. We know that. It's preseason football. It's fourth quarter. That time, that lengthy of a break and everything like that, that late in the game, that's hard to ask players to restart their motors and get focused and protect themselves and play the game the right way. Really, kudos to Bill Belichick. I think I read that, Matthew Slater said, like, one of his quotes was like, hey, listen, this isn't the AFC Championship game. Come on, let's just move on with life. And, well done by him and showing that leadership. When it comes out of Bill's mouth, everybody can get behind that. Bill's very smart. Bill's probably thinking about, wait, if this guy's paralyzed and we come back and play this game and do that, I mean, what I mean, where are my guys' brains at? And then it just looks insensitive on us as a league, a team, everything. So I think it was the total right decision there.
It's just the right thing to do. I mean, It doesn't even need to be overanalyzed because there's no competitive complication. Mm-hmm. This is the right thing to do. It's a serious injury. It's more than a precautionary trip to the hospital. This feels serious. Let's just call it a day. The good news is it ended up not being as serious as it might have been. Now, the whole situation was sufficiently serious to cause the Patriots to add an interesting final line or two to the statement they issued yesterday with good news on the status of Isaiah Bolden. They pointed out, due to circumstances surrounding the abrupt and unexpected ending to Saturday's game, they have canceled their joint practices with the Tennessee Titans set for Tuesday and Wednesday. There was no explanation as to what about the circumstances from Saturday night caused the decision to abandon the practices on both days, Tuesday and Wednesday. They still could have done Wednesday. They still could have done one day. They decided to do neither. Bill Belichick was on WEEI earlier today, and he was asked about it, and he said, I just felt like for a number of reasons it was the best thing to do for the team. That's disappointing to me because to the extent that I feel like coaches are beginning to recognize that for many reasons, these joint practices may not be the best way to go, especially back-to-back days of them. Someone with the gravitas of Bill Belichick, when he makes a decision like that, it's an opportunity for him to lead.
Yeah.
And I wish he would have taken it, and I hope he still does. He'll meet with reporters at some point, and they'll ask him about it. And I hope he takes advantage of the opportunity to lead and influence and cause others to do the same instead of reverting back to the whole, this is strategic and we don't want to tell anyone else how we do things. We want them to have to make their own decisions because maybe that helps us in some weird way. Help the game. Be the leader. If there's a reason to not engage in joint practices that you have discerned from what happened on Saturday, and Chris, my thought was when you look at that and Bolden's kind of coming in hot, puts his helmet down, is he trying to give a little something extra to that receiver? Is there something that dates back to the joint practices? The first day's fine. The second day it gets a little more chippy, and then they play a game, and maybe you got some guys out there that aren't thinking about playing football, but they're thinking about trying to get the other guy. I don't know. But explain it to us, Bill. What is the connection, and why are you deciding to abandon the joint practices between the Titans and the Patriots? Just tell us so we can use that as another data point as teams decide whether and to what extent joint practices make sense for them going forward.
Right. Yeah, no, I want to hear it too. I mean, Bill is, like I've always said about Bill Belichick, if he was on Wall Street, he'd be the Wolf of Wall Street. He's well thought out. It's never anything that's just like, I don't think that ultimately was a good thing to be. Yeah, you're right.
I'm not sure.
Right.
I might have to rewatch.
You're right. Okay. All right. Yeah. You're right.
I don't think it turned out well.
It was good for a while there, though. It packed some punch for a while. You know what I mean there, okay? All right, but either way, your point is real. You're right. Maybe I need to come up with a better Wall Streeter, okay? What's another billionaire I could throw out there? Ray Dalio, okay? He'd be Ray
Michael
Dalio.
Milken.
Some, sure, right. But yeah, I want to hear those thoughts too.
Enron.
And I was thinking I was texting with a few people around the NFL about this a little in the weekend. I think, the one thing I got back is that maybe the sentiment that teams have gone too far into doing these joint practices, right? It's a good thing. They like the work. It changes things up, certainly. But now it's like, wait, we got, a different team every week. It's wearing out guys a little bit in in a time of the year where they're worn out anyways. And then I think on top of that, it's like you've talked about a little bit, it's the get back factor. Oh, this team dominated yesterday in the joint practice. Now that team, has to hear about it from their coaches and watch it on film, but then go on social media, and this is the other thing that was texting me, and then see, some of their teammates or themselves getting embarrassed on social media by people in the crowd or whatever. So now they're amped up even more to go at it tomorrow and prove people wrong. And I just think there's maybe a little bit of that going on. And I think some teams are maybe taking a step back here going, wait, maybe we've overdone it a little bit with these joint practices.
And then they play a game.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Right.
They got the first day. Somebody wins, somebody loses. Whoever lost comes back pissed off and chippy the next day. Then they have a game after the second day. So you can have guys out there. And think about it. The NFL, thou shalt not taunt, because you don't want to have the guy who was on the wrong end of the taunting looking for an opportunity to get that guy later in the game. How is that any different from building up 2 days of animosity and then going out and playing a game? Let's not build up the animosity. Let's not get familiar with each other. Familiarity breeds contempt. That may be what Bill Belichick realized. Matt LaFleur, the coach of the Packers, talked about it after Saturday's game. The idea, one day is fine. Second day, problematic. You still got the game. See, the one day can still be problematic because there's the unresolved tension and the criticism from whoever got the worst of that practice, and they still play the game.
Yeah.
Maybe the path here is, if you're going to have a preseason, and maybe one of these days they won't. Maybe there'll be 20 regular season games. But if you're going to have a preseason, the idea of having multiple joint practices before the same two teams play in the preseason may not be a good idea. Think about it during the week. I mean, I've never thought about it this way. How ridiculous would it be if two teams that were going to play, let's say the Chiefs and the Jets, they're playing week 4, Sunday Night Football. Let's say the Chiefs come to town early and they have joint practices in advance of the game. And I know it's unrealistic because you got to get your game plan ready and whatnot, but just the idea, you've got a game to play. You're going to be exposed to those guys then. You don't need all those extra reps. You don't need that extra tension. You don't need that extra chippiness. And LaFleur realized it. Robert Saleh spoke about it last week. And I'm just disappointed that Bill Belichick, if that's the reason, that he hasn't taken advantage of the chance to add his voice to it, because his voice carries so much weight.
Yeah, he's the godfather. You know, we want to hear from him, and I want to hear his thoughts on this subject. You know, I think the thing we see, to me, would be the best formula to kind of to piggyback off of what you're saying is joint practice. Okay, you go at it hard, you practice really hard, you have a preseason game 2 days later. The starters don't play. The guys who worked the most in the practice don't play. So now you're at least eliminating some of that chippiness carryover. That would be the thing I'd like, I think could remedy the situation a little bit too. And I think the other thing too, teams have realized, I had a coach say this to me during the weekend too. What happens is the coaches lose their way too. We want to work on this. We want to work on this. Team comes into town and they do stuff on us to now where we can't work on this. And now we spent the night, let's come up with a few ways to screw them over in tomorrow's practice. And we got away from the things we kind of wanted to work on in the big picture, but we want to look good tomorrow in practice. And so we're going to add a few things and game plan a few things just to make practice work tomorrow. And that's one coach. I had one coach get back to me that certainly was trying to say that they fell in that trap a little bit too. You fall in the competitive nature, just like the players want to prove, the bad performance the day before was just a one-day thing, and they're trying to get back the next day.
And it's that whole dynamic of going in and getting ripped by your coach after the first joint practice, which Robert Saleh did. We saw it on Hard Knocks.
Yeah,
he
right.
ripped the Jets after their joint practice with the Panthers, and Rain knocked out the second day, which ended up being a good thing. So I think Saleh's come to the conclusion one day is all that you should do. LaFleur is coming to that same point. Belichick came to the conclusion that, at least for this week, 0 days should be done. And last night, out of nowhere, a joint statement from the Texans and the Saints that they canceled their joint practices set for this week with no explanation. Again, when DeMeco Ryans meets with reporters, when Dennis Allen meets with reporters, hopefully they will give a clear and thorough explanation as to why they decided it, not just hide behind coach speak. We've paid attention to some of the things that have been going on around the league. We understand that, and I credit the coaches who are changing behavior midstream. It would be very easy to just say, we're just going to get through this preseason and we'll worry about how we handle joint practices next year. But we're already down this path. Let's just finish it. I like the fact that they're willing to pull the reins and think of things a different way and change arrangements. And whatever it was for the Texans and the Saints, Chris, I'd love to know how they came to the conclusion and what the issue is, and can they add their voices to what sounds like a lot of common sense as it relates to the wisdom of joint practices.
Yeah, well, it becomes to, I want to hear it too, Mike. I mean, you're right. I want to hear DeMeco Ryan or Dennis Allen at least give us, hear their 2 cents too. But yeah, it does seem like this year there's been a lot more joint practices across the league. It's multiple practices per week. And at some point I would look at it and go, wait, how much are we going to wear our team out or do this before the season even starts anyways? And maybe that's what a few of these teams have come to the realization as well. It's just like, hey, we've gotten a lot of work. We've had a lot of physical practices. Why are we rolling the dice here on one more week this late in the game? And maybe that's where they're getting smarter.
Speaking of leadership, where's the union on all of this? Where's the union at all? Where's Lloyd Howell, the new executive director? I don't know when he officially took over. I don't know when he officially takes over. They gave him the job, and everybody went silent. Where's J.C. Treader on this, the president of the union? He's not playing anymore, but he could come out and say something. They could add their voice to this as well. They've agreed to the system that allows this, and if people are crossing the line, they have rights on behalf of the players where they can say these practices are too intense. The coaches aren't policing their own guys. There are too many fights. We're getting guys injured. Last week, Danny Johnson of the Commanders, rotator cuff injury when he got slammed to the ground by Mark Andrews after a play. Where's the union? They have been MIA, AWOL, any other acronym you want to use that signifies where the hell are they? So they should get involved in this as well. Let's take a break. Superlatives from week 2 of the preseason coming next on this Monday edition of PFT Live. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.